Recording. We are live. So it is so good to see your face, for real though. Like every time I talk about you, I still think about you like you're like 17 years old.
Well, I hope you always think about me that way, even decades from now.
I was like looking at the stuff, and then what was it? I think it was was it 4 years ago when you were like Forbes 30 under 30?
Yeah.
I think I saw it pop up, and I was like, but he's a little boy. And I was just like,
Of course he's under 30. He's only 17.
And I'm like, oh, wow. No, he's a man, married, kids, the whole deal, starting companies and businesses. And it's just, it's been incredible to watch your growth through the years. And like, that's what makes me feel old when I see you guys. I'm like, I still feel like I'm the same. And I'm like, oh shoot, that was a long time ago. Yeah. So this year is actually 19 years for me. So it's half my life I've been with Cutco. Like I started at 19 and I've been with Cutco 19 years now. So it's pretty insane. But yeah, I want to thank you so much for taking time out, because I know you've got a lot of stuff cooking right now, and I'd love for you to share a little bit later about that. But I wanted to talk about back in the day, so it's been, you started with me in 2006. February of 2006. I remember it like it was yesterday, and it's like 14 years ago. But I remember you starting off, and I always tell people, and they don't, like, even my husband didn't believe me. He's like, I know you say that he like used to have a little bit of a speech impediment, or like he dressed like a certain, I'm like, he is a different person. I was like, the kid that walked into my office 14 years ago wore like big tees, like got so nervous when he was on the phone and would like stutter on the phone.
I would have to hang up because I couldn't even get words out. I stuttered so much.
And he's like, that's not true. And I'm like, oh no, it's true. So I'd love for you to share, like, before, if you can go back 14 years ago to pre-Cutco, and just kind of where you were at and coming into Cutco, and initially starting off that first year, just how it helped you personally, confidence, like skill sets. Like, I'd love for you to share a little bit about like where you were, because I think a lot of people can look at you now and see you just absolutely kicking butt at life, like launching out DocuSign, like 30 under 30, like now launching out, a nonprofit, working with Garden City, and they're like, I wish I could do that, and they don't realize like where you started. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's crazy to say 2006.
I know.
I think about Cutco definitely weekly. There's no question about that. Probably close to every single day. I just am so in gratitude. I've kind of made a promise to myself. I've realized that, 99% of requests that come my way, I just say no to at this point, just because I'm trying to just preserve my time. But almost anything with Cutco, I feel like a lifelong commitment to say yes to, just because I'm just so in debt to it. I feel like there's zero question that I would be where I am today without that experience, right? So like the way I talk to my wife all the time, I tell her I would really hope and I pray that our children do Cutco, right? Like that would be like that would be like a big, bold, hairy, audacious like dream that I have for my children, right? And it's hard to unpack kind of why I feel so, why I believe in that so much. But where I was before 2006, let's see. I came from a family that was very low middle class. The most we ever made in 1 year was probably, I think my dad said the most he ever made in 1 year as a household income was about $50,000. Pretty dysfunctional in some sense, like it wasn't perfect by any means. We had a lot of financial difficulties, a lot of health difficulties. As you remember, Kathy, that was like right when there was just a lot going on with my father's health. And so I basically was looking for, honestly, the reason why I went to Cutco was because I was really hoping to find something that I could untap my potential to make a lot of income. I needed the money, right? I needed the money. At least I told myself I needed the money to financially provide for myself. So I was just in a stage at that station in life in 2006 where, things at home were a little rocky. Financially it was rocky. Health for my family was rocky. And I was just looking to kind of help my family, And so that's kind of where I was before going into that office, that one day there of your office.
And as you started working, like, think about your first year. I know, for those who don't know, Mikey First year crushed it, like we didn't even know. They were like, how's he gonna do? I remember Tyler being like, I don't know, but like try him out. He was like, we had a fight in high school over something dumb or some random stuff. But I remember you coming out, hitting your first promotion your first day, second promotion second day, third promotion that week, and just like consistent week in, week out, week in, week out. And that year in 2006, I mean, you were rookie of the year, like #1 in the nation, earning over $50,000, like more than, your parents might have earned in a year combined. You earned as a senior in high school, more than all your teachers. So obviously the money came, and you put away a lot of money through school, especially years later, 09, 2010, being like #1 All-American, right? I don't know if it was 08 and 09 or 09 and 2010, something like that, right? Yeah. That you were #1 All-American. And so those summers, I think you put away almost $50,000 just in the summertime that you earned, which was pretty outstanding to watch. So the money came, you bought a house, did a lot of cool things, like while still being in college. How did it help you personally? So obviously financially, that was a game changer, as it was for me, coming from lower income and never seen that kind of income before. But, what you were learning, because I remember seeing you from like, couldn't get a sentence out on the phone to like making customers laugh like crazy, then speaking on stages. And I remember seeing that shift. What did you learn? How did it help you with that?
Yeah, you're right about, you're right about the money and the capital came. I think that, it's difficult when you're in the position to actually see the people on stage sometimes and be like, oh, wow, are they really making that much money? Or like, are they really doing that, right? And so I quickly got past that as soon as I went through Fast Hard and started selling like crazy. And so it's actually funny that you're not focusing on the money-making thing. And you're right, that's not the best part of my Vector experience whatsoever. It was not about—
It's pretty cool, but
yeah, like it was great, right? And it was awesome, and it helped me financially. And I got to graduate college debt-free, obviously, with a ton of capital, and I got to help my family and so forth and so forth. So there's nothing wrong with obviously the income opportunities for it, but that's not the reason why I want my kids to do it, obviously, right? So going back to the intrinsic value as to, well, what else was so beneficial from this? A lot, right? A lot. I think one was, look, I had a bad stutter problem ever since I was young, right? And so I never really had an arena to practice that out. So I never had an arena to iron that out and actually confront that. So a lot of people's fear is either fear of public speaking or just cold calling or asking for an order or asking for recommendations or whatever it is. And it's kind of like you don't really know until you try. So that just gave me an arena, playground to actually try it out, right? So I was able to combat probably my fear of speaking and stuttering. So that was a big thing. Probably the best thing is I just did something, and I spoke to someone about kind of if I had one thing that I wanted to share with the world, what would it be? And it's called, it's this big, huge podcast. It's the #1 finance podcast in the world. It's called Invest Like the Best. And it'll come out here soon. And what he asked me, and I talked a lot about Cutco, and what he asked me is like, what's the #1 thing that you learned there? And I said, to build rapport, like to build rapport. And so I didn't even know when, I remember you saying the word rapport nonstop, and I never asked, but I was like, I don't even know what that word means, And then people would keep coming to appointments with me and be like, you're really good at building rapport. And I still didn't know what that meant. And so I finally found out that just meant like, you're really good at like building relationships with people and building trust, right? And actually people buy from people that they like and so forth. And so I think that's probably the biggest benefit that it gave me, was just understanding how to connect with people. And coming from my background, I was authentically curious about everything. So when I would walk into someone's house, I'd be like, oh my gosh, how long have you lived here? How do you like the neighborhood? What do you do for work? Where do you go to school? How many kids do you have? What's their names? And I would ask 1,000 questions, not because I was trying to build rapport, but just because I was just super, super curious and authentic, right? In terms of just wanting to learn and just experiencing the world that I'd never been in. So that's probably #2. So the first one was facing my fears. The second one was building rapport. And then the third one was, it really just gave me a foundation of business. It is so unfortunate that our college graduates in America today do not have a proper sense of business understanding, right? Like right now for my private equity company, we're interviewing people from everywhere, Harvard Business School, Stanford Business School, name the school. And as soon as you start talking about simple things, right? They just have no experience. They have no recollection. They have no stories. They have no, like, there's nothing to it. They were really, really good at reading books. They were really, really good at studying for a test and so forth. And when I was doing Cutco, I was like, okay, this is like cool and good, like selling knives, but it's not going to actually translate into anything. And little did I know, 15 years later, it plays into every single conversation I have all day, every day. So I think it just gave me a lot of confidence in terms of understanding selling something, positioning something, upselling, cross-selling, just everything that business is. So probably those three things are the things besides making money that I got out of it.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because like I have students all the time who are like, I'm not really gonna do sales. Like that's not my field. And I'm like, it's called like life, like the world we live in. So can you speak to that? I mean, with private equity, you've worked with nonprofits. We have a lot of our young people super stoked to be involved with like in the nonprofit sector in some capacity. You have, your business with Garden City, you worked with DocuSign, like just in different things you've seen. And even as you look at other companies and you're looking to invest, what are some of the traits that you've seen used? I mean, you were talking about it, mentioning it, but I just, when someone says, I'm not going into business, I kind of laugh. So I'm like, no, but you're going into worlds like life, relationships, people. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, so anyone that says that, I mean, sales, take the word sales out and try to replace it with something else. So unfortunately, I feel like many of us, and I'm not going to point any fingers of who would do this. I don't know, but many of us have put this negative connotation on the word sales, like, oh, you're a salesperson, you're a sales rep. And typically it's like, I don't know where, again, it came, but like this used cars person, used salesman of cars kind of thing kind of gets associated into it. And that's just incorrect. And it's unfair. So I think if you replace the word sales with just call it relationship building that leads to a transaction of some sort, right? Then I think the question is, okay, are you telling me that there's a world out there that it's not about relationship building that actually leads to a transaction? And the answer to that is no. Every single thing in this universe is building a relationship that leads to a transaction, right? So I don't look at myself like in my marriage is sales or that our nonprofit is sales, but in my marriage and in our nonprofit and in any tech investing or in whatever it is that I've done in whatever, it's always building a relationship that eventually leads to a transaction of some sort, right? And so the nonprofit that we started, New Story, I mean, this year, I don't know, we were on pace to do like $30 million, fastest growing nonprofit, right? And when you look at what we do, it is without a doubt building trusted relationships with people, and it leads to a transaction of some sort. Sometimes that transaction is raising capital. Sometimes that transaction is building someone a house that is homeless. Sometimes that transaction is partnering with the government so that we could build new shelter for their families that are displaced. So take out the word sales and kind of view it as the fact of everything in life is about building trusted relationships that will yield to a transaction. And you could be anything. So we're hiring here at my company, financial analysts, and we're hiring all sorts of different roles that have nothing to do with what the world calls sales. But if they cannot build trusted relationships that leads to some sort of transaction, then they don't have a role here, unfortunately, so it's critical. It's baked into everything I believe that has to do with this world.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And if you could go back, I don't know if you can remember what it was like 14, 15 years ago, but if you could go back for when you started with Cutco, and if you could speak to your 17-year-old self, like what advice would you have given yourself starting off that now that you didn't know then? Like, what would you say to yourself?
That's a great question. And I invest a lot of my time into personal development. And so I think about things like this daily, hourly almost. I'd probably tell myself that I am not measured by what I do. So that's probably what I would tell myself, that I'm not measured by what I do. I'm measured by who I am. And so I got a lot of my personal identity when I was young, and even recently, in terms of what I did. So when I would crush it at Cutco and I would sell thousands of dollars, right? That's where I would get all of my pride and my identity and my ego from. So there was a lot of ego during my days doing Cutco, because that's what I believed that I was. So when I was doing good, I was high. When I was doing bad, I was down. And so if I could look back and tell myself is have a foundation, have a bedrock of what your true values are, right? Of humility, of kindness, of compassion, of being empathetic, right? Of being generous, of being honest, right? And and I think if I were to operate from that bedrock, I think if I operated from that foundation, I probably would have been just as successful, right? Probably just the same as successful, but deep inside, it would have been a lot more. I just would have been a lot more at peace and joyful and kind of more content,
Yeah, more fulfilled with what you're doing.
It's not about what you do, it's about who you are, right? It's kind of that whole thing.
Oh yeah. And I remember when I started off here, like that, it's such a normal thing for high achievers to take so much of what you like do and look at so much of like the accomplishment and measure your worth based on accomplishment, which by the way, it's great to achieve and it's fun to do that, but know that, I think you've seen this and I've seen it in my life, that the more you grow as a person, like naturally, like you just improve at everything, like without even trying. It's like when you're growing you and really showing up as the best you and treating people the best way they can be treated, and really just you decide to show up in a different space. And I really learned that when I started with Cutco. I mean, years ago, that was a big thing for me, that when I started this job, I realized like just how I thought about things, right? And like just the filter and the perspective on things, and understanding that take pride in your actions, right? Like whatever actions, when you're taking action, period. You're making let's put it to Cutco, you can put it to non-Cutco, but you're making phone calls, you're asking, like you're doing the right things, like you should take pride in taking the right actions regardless of results. Results are going to vary, right?
Exactly. No, it is so well put. There's nothing at all wrong with striving to say, I'm going to be the number one person at SC1 or the number one person at SC2, or I'm going to strive to hit this goal. There's nothing wrong in itself in that. It's only wrong when it becomes your idol, when it becomes your identity, when you are just measured like a hockey stick based upon the influx of that. So I think the whole goal, again, looking back, would just kind of know that my identity is not based on what I do, it's who I am, right? And by the way, that gives you a lot more longevity to do things, right? So because that way, as you said, right, you don't look at calls of saying, oh, today was a burnout and no one answered or no one gave me an opportunity and so now I'm down, right? Instead, you're just like, just another day. It doesn't change who I am, doesn't change my joy, my perspective, anything like that. So yeah, that's critical, is that healthy mindset.
Yeah, I love it. Any other things for you? You mentioned like for wanting your kids to do this, like what are things that you'd hope for them? If you said them working with Cutco, I hope that they gain ... What would you hope for your kids?
I don't know about hope that they gain. Something I would tell them is not to give up. That's like a huge one, right? That's a huge one. I did Cutco from, I don't know, 7 years, like probably, yeah, 7 years. And I would just see so many people throw in the towel. So many people give up so quickly. They were just afraid of failure, So I think I would just tell my children to just embrace failure, love failure, and crave failure, right? Something I always think of is how Michael Jordan missed more shots than anybody, right? It's guaranteed. Why? Because he took more shots than anybody. So if I go out right now and I take one shot in my lifetime and I hit that one shot, I miss none. Michael Jordan, he might have missed 1,000, but that means that he obviously made a lot more than I did as well. And so just kind of the whole mentality that like failure is beautiful and failure is actually something that's your friend. So that's something that I would tell my children. Something else that I would really, really want my children to actually focus on if they were to do Cutco is to serve others, really serve others. Like it's something I look back on, I wish I did a better job with. I know that you and my other manager, Mike Casetta, would ask me a lot of times to like spend time with others, or like, I forgot the name of it, but when you bring someone on your appointments there
Field
with you,
training.
field training, yeah. And for me, I viewed it as like an inconvenience, which is so, so, so wrong to look at it that way. Like that's the beauty of actually a leadership role. So like if you're doing good in Cutco, or if you just had a good fast start, or if you're the top leader on the team, actually realizing that that is the entire beauty, that when you look back 10, 20 years, a couple years from now, right? What you will probably most be proud of is the relationships that you built and how you invested in others and shared your strengths. And what I realize is that nobody is a $100 bill. No one bats 100, right? And so, as you know, I don't follow sports, so no one shoots 100% or whatever they say. I always say that, everyone's like, no, no, if you do this in baseball, that's good. I'm like, okay, you know what I'm saying. No one shoots 100, okay? And so something I realized from kind of now looking back is I'm like, man, a lot of these people could have taught me something if I was willing to be taught. You know, like, so maybe I was good at asking for the $10,000 order every time, or maybe I was good at asking for referrals. But you know, on this, if I would have actually been humble enough to ask for feedback, they could have made me better in return. You know, so I think just having more of a servant mindset would have been really good. Um,
Being coachable.
yeah, being coachable. Yeah, being pliable, soft, pliable, coachable. It's all rooted really in this thing of the humility. You know, look, it's a great opportunity to make it whatever you want, right? Like if you want to make Cutco your platform that you could really launch yourself into amazing, amazing things, that's exactly what it can do. But you need to be willing to be fully, fully, fully committed. Just like a marriage, right? I mean, a marriage can be the most beautiful thing in the world. You just need to be willing to be fully, fully committed. Not every day is a 10 out of 10, right? The days that you're down, you just roll over to the next thing. You go, I'm committed. It's not a matter if I'm going to quit. That's not even on the table, right? I'm totally committed to this relationship, right? Because I know it's going to yield great, great fruit, right? I mean, Mike Cassetta, my other manager, so I only had two at Cutco, you and Michael Cassetta, and he and I talk about Cutco every time we're together, every time, about how we wish that everyone did it, because it would just make the world so much better with the leaders that it would create, you know?
Yeah, I love that you said that. And that, I think that that's why I'm here so many years later. I'm like, just everyone who goes through here, they're just better people, you know, like they show up better in their relationships in the world and their businesses. And that's something that I think is so beautiful. So last thing, if you could share since Cutco, your trajectory, and then just any tips you'd give to anyone starting off. We have a lot of representatives who have started in the last couple of weeks to the last year with us, a big chunk. And then obviously we have our vets. But yeah, if you could share kind of your journey since Cutco and just any tips to wrap up.
Yeah, well, congrats, first of all, to all of you who are watching this, because I believe that you are in probably the best place that you want to be right now. You are in a position that you're going to learn and develop and grow and prosper and thrive. You're going to actually have to face a lot of your fears. You're going to have to do a lot of things that you haven't done before. But the most beautiful part is that you will grow, right? And there's nothing more important than that. And change, I believe change is the most powerful word in the English dictionary, right? And without change, we cannot develop, prosper, or grow. So you have to be willing to just change and see what this summer or this opportunity or this career that you have in front of you has in store, and be totally committed to that. My journey after Cutco was after graduating school. So I did Cutco throughout college as well. And then once I graduated from the university, from my university, I went to Silicon Valley and I joined a tech company. I only got the opportunity because I did Cutco. And so that really made me stand out from a lot of the other people that didn't have any experience in college. I joined that company as a sales manager, a small little team I managed. And then we sold that company to Dell. And we sold that company to Dell in 2011. I became the chief of staff at Dell, so one of the CEOs. And that just means, like, if any of you have watched House of Cards, you probably know Doug. I think that's his name, but the chief of staff guy in House of Cards. But it's just the jack of all trades. You're just the right-hand person to the CEO. You're the trusted advisor. You're an extension to the CEO. So whatever a CEO does all day, that's what you do all day, right? And so I did that at Dell for 2 years. And then after that, I joined a small startup named DocuSign. At the time it was small, and I was a chief of staff to the chairman and CEO there. And we grew that company for the last 6 years. So we grew it from like 150 or 200 employees, and now it's like 6,000. And so I did that for the last 6 years. First 3 years I was chief of staff. The last 3 years I was the global vice president and general manager for several of our business units globally. And then started a nonprofit while I was at DocuSign. And we built houses and communities in third world countries of families that don't have shelter. And so that's called New Story. And so I'm still involved on the board of New Story. And then I left DocuSign earlier this year in February to launch my own private equity company. So we basically, if you're familiar with Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, they buy companies and they hold them forever. They have no intention of buying and selling them. They just buy them and hold them and let them grow. And they keep the management teams in place and they provide great culture. Is exactly what we do. So we raised like $30 million a couple months ago. And that's what we do. We buy businesses here in the Southeast and we hold them forever and try to make them amazing through culture and technology. And so that's been my journey since Cutco.
I love it. Any parting words to this crew here? I know you said a lot and I just appreciate you so much. It's just so good to see you. I talk about you like every week, like all the time. So it's just like, are we ever gonna like get to hear from him? I'm like, you know, I should probably interview him because I haven't. I just like stand on the sidelines like a proud, you know,
Yeah. Well, probably my parting words, it actually, it just came to me and I feel ashamed that I haven't even said it yet, is how blessed and fortunate they are to be under your leadership. And especially in today's day and age, anything you say could be blasted all across the internet very quickly. And so I gladly like say, like, I so trust you. It's not even funny. And I believe that if you have a leader that people could believe in and trust into, they will run into war with you, right? And so what I would say is my parting words is, not only is it a great opportunity, obviously, that the whole nation has of working with Vector and the job itself, right? But the wrong manager could screw everything up, right? I mean, right? It's just like you could have the best job ever, or the best position ever in the NFL. You have the wrong coach, the whole thing goes south, right? And so I just think you guys should really realize, just seize the day that Kathy Vasquez, what's your last name now? Kristen, yeah. See, I still know it just by Vasquez, is your leader, and I just so trust her, and I'm so in debt to her, honestly, for the rest of my life. I've said that many times to many different people. So my parting words is just, you're really lucky. You're really lucky. Seize the day. Don't blink, right? Give it all you got. And there's a pot of gold at the other side of the rainbow, you know, so seize the day and don't give up.
Awesome. Thank you.